Don't see the difference, do you?
Well, that one's purple.
Get the exact same coverage as the nation's leading carriers, starting at $20. Consumer Cellular.
Rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. Three little birds, it's by my doorstep, singing no worry.
Wednesday on ET, our certified country exclusive takes us to Birmingham, Alabama, with Blake Shelton counting down to his voice goodbye.
No, I didn't cry or anything because I don't cry. I'm a man.
Oh, he cried. Well, The Voice returns March 6th on NBC, and we're going to leave you now.
Happening now.
Friday's dog attack has many people feeling frustrated and scared, but they aren't the only dogs wandering the city's streets. A look at the city's pervasive loose dog problem.
Parents, if you're on the lookout for a new child safety seat, we've got some new safety innovations you're going to want to know about next.
And I'm tracking our next weather maker headed our way. I'll let you know when it arrives and what it means for our conditions in just a bit. The news at 5 starts right now.
We're following breaking news right now. A foot chase from a potentially stolen car leading to shots fired at officers. 4 people now in custody after this encounter on the west side of the city. It started around 2 this afternoon near Zarzamora and Buena Vista. According to BCSO, a deputy ran a plate for a Kia. It came back stolen. And then that chase began with the suspects. At some point, all of them jumped out of the Kia and took off on foot.
Sheriff Javier Salazar says one of them fired a gun at deputies during the chase. 3 were caught quickly. One of them later found in a shed behind a home on Riverdale Drive. That little shed you saw there. BCSO says all of the suspects were armed and between the ages of 14 and 16.
No one hurt during the incident. We're told the suspects are facing charges of unlawful use of a vehicle, evading arrest, and possibly possession of a firearm.
We're following even more breaking news at this hour. Congressman Joaquin Castro's office says he has been diagnosed with cancer. Castro was released from MD Anderson in Houston today after having surgery to remove malignant tumors from his small intestine.
In a statement from the congressman, he says, quote, "My prognosis is good. I expect to be home recovering in Texas for several weeks before then returning to Washington to continue my work on behalf of the people of my hometown, San Antonio," end quote.
3 dogs euthanized over the weekend after that vicious and deadly attack last week involving at least 2 of those animals.
But those aren't the only ones wandering loose on San Antonio streets. Garrett Berger takes a look at the city's pervasive problems with stray dogs, many of them with a home to return to.
The sight of loose dogs isn't exactly strange in San Antonio. For Francis Flores on the west side, it's not even a concern anymore.
At first when we didn't know, but since they're always around now, they don't bite, and so it doesn't make a difference anymore.
That wasn't the case Friday, where an 81-year-old man was killed by at least 2 pit bulls less than 2 miles away. Deadly consequences like that may be rare, but the problem is not. Of the more than 87,000 calls for service ACS got last budget year, spokeswoman says a large portion were for loose animals, with fewer than 30 ACS officers on duty at any one time to handle it.
If you look at that math, it's going to come into play when it comes down to response time.
In the same time frame, the city had nearly 3,600 recorded bites, although that includes any time that any animal breaks someone's skin or someone's exposed to high-risk wildlife.
The 3 dogs that ACS euthanized have been involved in a combination of 3, possibly 4 bite incidents before this one. But an ACS spokeswoman says they can't just take someone's dogs.
Because remember, pets are property in the state of Texas, so I cannot take somebody's property away from them.
The dogs went through quarantine, but ended up back with the owner. At least one of the incidents may have been serious enough to warrant a dangerous dog investigation, which could have led to stricter requirements for the owner. But ACS didn't have a witness or victim willing to fill out the necessary affidavit. Bottom line, the agency says it followed the law.
If there's changes that the community wants to the law, that's something that is external to ACS.
Friday's incident has made Flores more concerned about keeping her pit bull, named Warning, properly secured, because many of those loose dogs you see belong to someone.
Put it to you like this, my responsibility would be my dog, and that should have been his response. You know what I mean?
Garrett Berger, KSAT 12 News.
A man is dead and a suspect in custody after a shooting late last night outside of a bar. That shooting happened around 11:30 on Sunday night at Morales' Ice House on Frio City Road. That's near Highway 90 and South Calavera Street on the southwest side. San Antonio police say a man was shot in the parking lot outside of the bar. The victim somehow, though, made it back inside the bar before he died. We're told officers arrested a suspect in another part of the city for this. No information about that suspect has been released.
Thankfully, the poll was too tough. Tonight, San Antonio police are investigating an attempted ATM theft at a Northside bank. It all happened about 4:15 this morning at a Chase Bank on Loop 1604 and Blanco. Witnesses told officers 3 people wearing masks hooked up the ATM to a truck. They tried to pull it out of the wall. After several attempts of doing that, the suspects were unsuccessful, so they left. Officers say they left behind a gold tote chain and a crowbar. Investigators are now looking through security video from the ATM to try to find those suspects.
Today, some of the state's top leaders, as well as top sports figures, gathered to pay respects to businessman icon Red McCombs. His funeral service held this morning at the Tobin Center in a service that was entitled "A Celebration of a Life Well Lived." Speakers at the funeral included city, county, and state leaders. Coach Greg Popovich and some other former Spurs folk as well, some of them applauding his legacies, especially the legacies that he left behind in the Alamo City and Bexar County.
His reach is incomprehensible. I mean, it's so far and wide, it's pretty amazing.
He's part and parcel. You might also put Red McCombs after Bexar County, San Antonio.
McCombs played a huge part in bringing the Spurs to San Antonio. He owned the team 2 separate times. He passed away last week, surrounded by his loved ones at the age of 95.
More on that funeral coming up at 6. And more than 3 weeks after the toxic train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, the EPA approving contaminated waste to be shipped out of the area. They're beginning to monitor the groundwater at the accident site, as well as check the surrounding area for contamination. The EPA is sending tons of toxic water and soil to approved sites, according to federal environmental authorities. About 1.8 million gallons of liquid waste heading to northern Ohio, while the loads of solid waste are traveling 20 miles south. The White House directing multiple agencies to continue checking in on families even after public officials declared the water safe there.
There have been no exceedances for residential air quality standards, and outdoor air quality remains normal.
The federal and state government leaders plan on hosting daily media briefings to address questions and share updates on the recovery efforts here.
Millions of Americans who owe billions in student loan debt will be watching the Supreme Court very carefully tomorrow as it gets set to hear arguments in the case challenging the president's loan forgiveness plan. That forgiveness policy, some say, is an overreach of executive power, but also a number of states say it will hurt them financially, something that must be proved before the judges at the Supreme Court. The loan forgiveness policy was a centerpiece for Biden's presidential campaign and would absolve an estimated 40 million Americans who owe $500 billion in college loans.
I think that everyone has a right to say how their taxes are being spent. I feel like taxes are for the greater good, and this is for the greater good.
2 borrowers and a group of 6 Republican states which brought the challenges argue the president's plan is an illegal abuse of power and unfair to some borrowers who paid off their loans already.
Check out TransGuide on this Monday. Let's go to Highway 90 at I-35, and you can see a bit of a backup, but, no accidents out here. It's just the give and take on a rush hour Monday.
Warm rush hour Monday. 86. Ooh. Wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, we got a visitor.
I hope it doesn't sting you.
Some kind of visitor. Sometimes we get little wasps' nests around these cameras way on top of buildings. That could be the case. I don't know. It's that time of year where you start to see more bugs around anyway. Good for the bats, right? And I noticed they're back in town by looking at radar trends over the past several days. By the way, 86 degrees, dew point at 25. We've got dry air in place right now. And that's going to be the case for just another day. Then the humidity's back very briefly. It's unseasonably warm. 89 in Del Rio, 82 in Joanne's backyard in Lakey, 86 Panna Maria and Schertz. Windcrest even at 86 degrees and Bernie 87. As we go through the evening, pretty straightforward. Low humidity, calm wind, comfortable temperatures. 10 o'clock 67, midnight 62. Yeah, crack open the windows if you'd like, because it's going to be some nice air. However, we've got a laundry list of allergens, and we'll show you those later on in the newscast and talk about our next system that affects us this week coming up.
Thank you, Adam. Today, city leaders announcing the FAA is approving a multi-million-dollar grant for the San Antonio International Airport. That grant worth a total of $20 million. The money will go into the airport's terminal development program. It'll help with the cost of building up the facility to allow for more capacity at the ground gates. It comes as Mayor Ron Nirenberg, as well as some other city leaders, traveled to D.C. They were advocating to get this funding for the airport.
For a generation, it's been a little bit of an underwhelming experience for a lot of folks. This is the 7th largest city in the United States, and San Antonio deserves a world-class airport, and that's what this development plan is all about.
The new facility will be placed south of Terminal A. Construction expected to begin in 2024. The new facility will be finished by March of 2025.
Car seats for babies have come a long way in the past 60 years. Now there's one feature that's starting to catch on in the U.S. And as 12 on your side's Marilyn Moritz explains, it could significantly reduce the risk of head injuries.
Their precious cargo. So Natalie Gerstein's top priority for picking a car seat is safety.
Baby stuff is always innovating and changing at a miraculous rate, so they're always coming out with new and better.
Just look at how car seats have changed over the years. Now one clever feature that started in Europe is now becoming more available here. It's called the load leg. It gives extra support by extending a leg from the car seat base to the car floor.
It allows for crash forces to be absorbed more so by the car seat and the load leg, and less crash energy to be transferred to your child occupant.
When the government tests car seats, they don't use the load leg if there is one. They're not required. But Consumer Reports did its own crash tests. And those tests show the load leg limits the motion of the seat and the child in a crash. Listen to this.
We've found that when using infant-sized dummies, that there was an average 46% reduction in head injury risk for seats that have a load leg versus those that don't have a load leg.
You can expect to pay more for the load leg seats. For example, the Kleck Ling got top ratings for excellent crash protection, and it's $500. But the Evenflow LightMax DLX also protected well, and it's $225. Before you buy a car seat with a load leg, make sure your car is compatible and check the manual. Marilyn Moritz, KSAT 12 News.
Still ahead on the news at 5, storms impacting the West Coast have now moved into the plains, bringing tornadoes. See the damage caused and where the storms are headed next.
Myra Arthur here in the KSAT newsroom, and here's what's coming up today on the news at 6 o'clock. A man on trial for murder, and this crime, according to prosecutors, was all caught on camera. Erica Hernandez was in court today as some of that surveillance footage was played. Plus, that's a wrap on Rodeo 2023. Find out who helped kids selling livestock leave the stock show with a pocket full of cash that exceeded their expectations. Plus, right now, Texas lawmakers are considering an idea that would change the Texas energy market. It comes 2 years after that nightmare 2021 winter storm. This idea is all an effort to try to keep something like that from happening again. But there are a lot of questions about this plan, including what it's going to cost you. We break that down in a new KSAT Explains today on the news at 6.
Thank you, Myra. Severe weather impacting much of the country from the West Coast to the East Coast and all the areas in between. ABC's Rena Roy reports from that rare snowstorm in California to multiple tornadoes touching down in the plains. The system is headed east, and it is not done yet.
The same relentless storm system wreaking havoc coast to coast. At the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, students forced to shelter in a basement as a potential tornado tore through the area.
A tornado has been sighted. Take cover immediately.
Golf ball-sized hail reported from Kansas to Texas and Oklahoma, where thousands were left without power. Multiple tornadoes touching down across the state.
There are multiple roadways still closed due to debris and down power lines.
In Norman, Oklahoma, lightning flashing through the sky during severe storms. In Shawnee, a large RV tipping over onto a home. In Southern California, residents cleaning up after a rare winter storm hit the area. Snow covering the mountains, plus rain and heavy winds bringing major flooding to some neighborhoods. This roof partially collapsed, trees ripped from their roots. A mudslide damaging this family's home, the back 3 bedrooms destroyed.
Here in New York City, forecasters expecting several inches of snow, and so are other areas in the Northeast that have seen a very mild winter. Boston expecting 3 to 6 inches by Tuesday. Rena Roy, ABC News, New York.
Meanwhile here, none of that. Maybe call up your friends in Southern California and say, hey, we've got your weather.
Seriously. I mean, it's one of those things where they're getting some abnormal conditions in a good chunk of Southern California that doesn't typically see, little dustings of snow and even frequent rainfall. Meanwhile, around here, we've got some dry conditions again. And I'm not just talking lack of rain, but even the air is very dry right now with those dew points down in the 20s. Warm through Thursday. We're talking well into the 80s. Cooler by Friday. You'll notice the temperature drop and a bit of a chill in the mornings by then, and becoming very windy in the transition. And I mean, some winds that we haven't seen in a while. So let's talk about this. Sometimes with these transitions from the warm to the cool, we get some rain, right? A cold front's going to hit Thursday evening. Unfortunately, look at our rain chance here. I don't really see that. We've got a 10% chance Thursday evening and Thursday night with the cold front that's going to move in. But for the most part, we're going to notice a very strong wind. Let's talk about this pattern. There's some of the active weather around the Great Lakes pushing eastward into the eastern U.S. and snow, of course, on the cold north side of it. But what we're watching for our next weather maker is this swirl, this counterclockwise swirl that's moving onshore into the Pacific Northwest. And it's bringing more moisture to California. Snow, of course, higher elevations, rain in the lower elevations. I even noticed a few lightning strikes just within the past half hour in parts of California. They usually don't see a whole lot of lightning and active thunderstorms out there. This little dip in the upper level flow, that's going to track southward in the days ahead, very slowly, blanketing more of the Rocky Mountains with snowfall, and even the southern Rockies stretching down into parts of northern Arizona and even New Mexico. Good for the ski resorts, don't get me wrong. But for us, you'll notice most of the energy and rain north and east of San Antonio. This is 9 a.m. on Thursday. Energy really comes in, and the moderate and even heavy rainfall and the bulk of the moisture is north and east of San Antonio. We've got about a 10% shot of tapping into a little bit of that moisture. I think it's doubtful we'll really see much, if anything, from that Thursday night. But what I do think we're guaranteed to see is extremely high winds by about 6-7 p.m. on Thursday, all the way through Thursday night and into Friday morning. This is our forecast for wind gusts, possibly in excess of 50 miles per hour in some spots. That wind coming in from the northwest, we could easily see gusts 40, 45 miles per hour, but even some little isolated areas of 50 mile per hour wind gusts cannot be ruled out Thursday night. So Friday morning is your trash, recycling, organics. I'd wait to put the bin out until you really have to early on Friday morning. All right, let's talk temperatures. 87 our high today. That's good 17 degrees above average and just 3 degrees shy of the record of 90 set back in 1918. 87 in Hondo, 90 Cotulla, 89 in Del Rio, 81 in Gonzales. Feeling a little spring-like minus humidity. We don't have the mugginess in the air, but that will be returning. And I'll talk more about that coming up at 6 o'clock and what that's going to mean for morning commutes in the days ahead. Tomorrow morning, we start the day around 54 in San Antonio, some upper 40s as you get into the hill country. By noon, sunny, up to 80, 87 the high temperature tomorrow afternoon, so very similar to today. We could still hit 90 some locations, Hondo, Sabinal, for example, are probably right around 90, and especially you get to Carrizo Springs, Cotulla in the lower 90s. More of the same Wednesday and Thursday, but the humidity's back on Wednesday. Some morning fog Wednesday and Thursday. Then the strong cold front hits Thursday evening, kicking up those strong winds. Look at those mornings back down into the 40s Friday through the weekend, and highs in the 70s. So unfortunately, no rain, but at least it'll be comfortable.
Yeah, it'll be pretty windy.
Yeah. Nice sun, 70s. Take it. All right, a Brahma bounce back last night.
And they really needed it after blowing that fourth quarter lead in the first week of the XFL season. The Brahmas beat the Guardians, a much-needed victory, and Hines Ward got his first ice-cold shower. Plus, in the NBA, Keldon Johnson's putting the Spurs' latest loss squarely on his shoulders. Coming up.
We just don't have it for 48. I think I can finally say that at this point in the season. We'll keep trying to get there. We'll stay on them. It's their job, but they got to own that. So that's the story of the game.
If the Spurs can play a full 48 minutes, they might just kiss their losing streak goodbye in big board sports.
Pro football coverage, powered by Davis Law Firm.
After a week of thinking about what could have been, the San Antonio Brahmas handled business in Orlando yesterday, beating the Guardians 30-12 for their first win of the season. The Brahmas led 13-6 at halftime, then added 2 more touchdowns in the third quarter to lead 27-6 heading into the fourth. After blowing a 12-point fourth quarter lead last week, the Brahmas were able to close this one out and leave Orlando all smiles. Linebackers coach Joey Porter held Coach Ward's arm just long enough so he could experience his first victorious ice bath as a head coach. Hines said winning this one for his guys means everything, and then he went 1989 on us.
My message to them is, just do the right thing. It's an old movie back in the day, Spike Lee. I got a little billboard, around our locker room and offices about doing the right thing. If you do the right thing, you give yourself a chance to get another opportunity to hopefully one day make it back to the NFL.
During post, Hines revealed that the Brahmas and Guardians shared the same flight to Orlando and then back again to the hub in Fort Worth. The Spurs will get one more crack to win on this year's rodeo road trip when they play at the Utah Jazz tomorrow night. Utah beat the Spurs Saturday 118-102, handing San Antonio its 16th straight loss while dropping them to 0-8 on the road trip. The Spurs led the Jazz by 10 points at halftime, and then they were outscored 30-14 in the third quarter. Those 14 points are a season low for the Spurs in a quarter this season. Keldon Johnson, who scored 18, put this loss on himself.
Starting with me. I'm accountable 100% for the third quarter, and I feel like I got to continue to be a leader, continue to set a great example, and I definitely take the blame for that. I got to move the ball, play better. So I feel like that third quarter, I just got to come out and set the tone a little bit better.
Jazz will host the Spurs tomorrow night at 8, and it certainly sounds like that losing streak is wearing on young Keldon.
And they have never had a rodeo road trip where they didn't win a game.
That's correct.
Kind of history you don't want them to set tomorrow night. Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Check out that high temperature trend. 87 the next couple of days. That's good 17 degrees above average. And then Thursday, wouldn't shock me if we had our first 90-degree day here in San Antonio. But right now we're forecasting 89. Then the bottom falls out a bit and we'll be back down to 72 for the high temperature come Friday and in the 70s this upcoming weekend. And that means some morning temperatures returning to the 40s by Friday.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for watching the News at 5 with us.
World News next. See you back here at 6.